the things that we're going to be doing over the coming months on this channel as we start to go through a little bit of a project transition and some work that we're doing in our own world, and also kind of projects that we're going to be doing with the community. One of the things that we're going to be bringing in over the coming months is a series of, I guess we could say, interviews or just kind of moments that are maybe discussions that we're going to be having with a few people in our multidimensional community, that I just believe people that need to be seen, people that need to be heard, people that are doing real work that I've encountered within the professional path that I have been on, that I just believe have something great to offer the world. And I think what better way to start this next stage of our series with the person that we have here with us today, Nora Donizetti of Nora Healings, which I believe is the name, right? It's Nora Healings, correct?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Nora has been working with us. I don't know how long it's been. Maybe it's been a year. Maybe it's been a little bit more. It feels kind of like something we've done in multiple lifetimes in the past, but Nora has been one of the people from, I guess we could say, our multi-dimensional soul group that I have had the privilege of both working with from a practitioner perspective and also receiving energy and healings and kind of being a part of just kind of this soul family, remembering activation process that a lot of us have been going through. And Nora has been one of the people that has been kind of a constant presence within our soul group for the past few years. And what I've noticed, and a lot of other people within our soul group have noticed, is just the manner in which she's sort of stepping forward right now on a much larger level to offer what I have observed to be one of the most authentic and unique frequencies of healing that I think are available right now. And I think that she's certainly not alone, and that I think Nora is part of this massive group of people that are kind of stepping forward and kind of offering that up to the world. And in my opinion, I think one of the best things we can do right now is highlight those individuals that are just honoring, like truly honoring this path of, discovery and activation. And, like I just said, stepping into service for the multidimensional human collective. And so anyway, before we get started here, can you just say your website really, really quickly as we get started? Because I want everyone, if you're here with us and you're watching this as it previews, open up a window on the side and go to Nora's website. But before we get started, can you please tell us your website?
The website is nora-healings.com.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, so everybody go to nora-healings.com. And then I guess in the meantime, Nora Donizetti, thank you for coming in. I guess you know that we're going to have this weird, cheesy intro, but who are you? What are you doing here? What is your mission on Earth at this stage of the human journey? And yeah, how's it going? What's up?
Hey, yeah, I'm doing pretty well, thank you. And since I've gone through this 6-month activation program with you, that was actually the moment when I realized that I actually want to try to do this professionally. Before that, I was very much on a self-healing journey, and I was just trying to learn how to basically deal with life and heal myself first. And visited some courses before that, but that was really just with the intention of learning to deal with certain energies and emotions. And but after your program with these other amazing people that I also hope to see maybe on this channel later on, I noticed that I actually can. And that was also something that you really helped me to realize, is that probably everybody has abilities of their own, and you really helped me to develop my own unique style, because you weren't the guy who was like, this is what you have to do and this is the way you have to do it and now go do it like this. But you really left it open to, for us to receive our own activations and gifts. And we have been training that in an almost playful way, but also just very dedicated. And it was kind of strict, but it was incredible. It was such a magical time. And that was when I decided that, yes, I'm going to try it. And that has been I think it's like a year ago, more or less.
Yeah. Was it about it? I think it was. I almost want to say 2 years, but my concept of time is so bad. Like it could have been 2 weeks and I'll be like, that was a whole year ago. You know what I mean? But But yeah, wow. And so you were officially part of group one, as I understand, of our kind of regular training group process, which, for better and worse and many other reasons has changed dramatically. It's a much more of an individual kind of journey now, but I think we are going to bring back more of a group experience, maybe in the coming year. Who knows, if enough individuals out there ask us for it. But yeah, thank you for being a part of that early stage of our journey. I'm genuinely honored to hear that it has had an impact on how you've kind of stepped forward. And I guess kind of having said that, take us through kind of a little bit of your early journey. Maybe going, you can even go back to childhood. Like, what sort of events in your life or experiences led you to even thinking, like, somehow I'm going to start taking classes, and somehow I think maybe I have an ability, because there was some series of events that had to go on in your life to where you were even like, it's not like we just bumped into each other in the astral realm. But yeah, take us through some of your own history.
Yeah, well, actually, maybe we did just bump into each other in the astral realms.
Uh,
No,
yeah,
it was kind of strange to sort of land on this planet for me, and I would say like the strangeness actually began when I was born. So this is not something I remember, obviously, but the day I was born, it was a hot summer day, and my mom was sort of delivering me in a hospital in Switzerland in the mountains. Well, it's actually in the valley
yeah.
in a village, and the windows were wide open. And the moment that I was born, she held me in her arms, and there was a golden eagle landing on the window frame and looking at me. And it's just not something that these birds regularly do because they live like way up high in the mountains. They don't usually fly down to the village and sit on windows. And I remember that my parents told me about it and that they were afraid that this bird was looking at me in a way of, seeing me as maybe their lunch or something. And so they closed the window and the bird flew away. But when I tune into this, as a grown up now, after all these experiences with the group and stuff, and my remembrance has sort of kicked in, and I can tune into this very differently. So it actually feels like someone was waiting for me.
Yeah.
And it has something to do with the animal kingdom because I grew up very, very much just being comforted and surrounded by the animals and them giving me a lot of safety and like security.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like there was someone waiting for me to see if I am actually going to do it, if I'm actually going to incarnate and
Huh.
sort of report it back somewhere. This is how it feels like now.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think it could have been, say like a guide or like a guardian aspect or some form of a being that was meant to be sure that you did, or were they just sort of like monitoring you? And who knows, maybe that's too much of a question, but
Yeah,
like, what do
I'm
you think?
I'm not exactly sure. It could have been a guide who just like used this vessel to come and see me in the physical. Or maybe it was something else that sort of took over this bird just to make sure that I am here. Um,
Well,
yeah, and then as I grew up, my parents were struggling, so they had a bit of a hard time in life. They were struggling with addiction and with their relationship, and yeah, in the end, I was neglected a little bit as a small child, and it was very chaotic and it was very unsteady. But I always had the animals around me, and the first, I think, like 4 years of my life. Well, first I was born in Switzerland, but then we moved to Spain because
hmm,
my mother is from Spain.
yeah.
And so I grew up there, and that was not such a nice time. But I remember that my grandparents had some land, and sometimes they they picked me up, and we went to that land, and they had like all sorts of vegetables there, and they had like cherry trees and nuts and stuff. And I remember that I just loved this place. That was a place where I could like just play and forget about the heaviness that I sort of experienced at home. And
Really?
our home was sort of, it was dark. It was like a haunted home. And I saw apparitions and entities all the time, especially in the
Yeah.
twilight or like in the shadows.
Around what age do you think you first started noticing that there were, maybe like shadow beings, or there was this strange, scary, or just weird energy in your home? Do you remember around what age you were?
It's actually one of my, I think it's my first like conscious memory of my life.
So
It's an
you came
apparition
in with
out
it.
of my
Okay.
baby bed. So I think I
Yeah.
was like 1.5 or 2 years old. I remember that I didn't form words in my mind, that it was all just impressions and emotions. And I remember laying in my baby bed, and it wasn't all completely dark, so I could see like the outlines of a chair that had like cloth or something over it. And I was laying there and looking at that and noticing how it changed shape and how it started to sort of feel like a presence, and then it started to have eyes. And then as I look around the room, it feels like everything turns into a being. And they just stand around me and look at me, and it's not necessarily, they never like came too close, but they were just present, and the presence didn't feel good usually. There were also like very, very nice presences that I could perceive as a child, but this was more like in nature, in the water. I think these were more like fairy type beings.
Yeah.
And then in the astrals, it was like growing up was so strange for me because it was extremely trippy in the sense of it being very, very like multidimensional. So when I
Yeah.
went to sleep, I went into other worlds, and I remember that that was also, it started when I was like 2 years old. That sometimes I was just like picked out of my bed at night, and I was in like spaceships with people and other children, and this happened almost every night. But I remember that, like growing up, I used to forget what happened during the day. So it was not like I woke up and was like, wow, what a strange dream or anything like that. But I remember that every time it happened, it was like, oh, there we go again. And then I remembered instantly. It was like this other life that was totally separate from my day to day, like Nora person life. So
Yeah.
that was really strange. And I thought that this is normal. I thought that this is what sleep means. It's like this strange feelings that overcome you, and strange visitors. And then, yeah, I grew up just being afraid of going to sleep. I didn't really have like super negative experiences at all, but I didn't know what they were. And my parents were trying to protect me and told me that it's just dreams, it's not real. They knew.
Did you notice how maybe some of what you had perceived as dark energies within your home, had you seen how they had impacted people, like maybe in your family or like in the world, or like were you also viewing that, or was it like a thing that was just, around you?
It was both. Well, I didn't necessarily saw how they impacted my parents or like people around me, but I noticed that my parents behaved very differently depending on just how they are doing, or whatever substance they took. And sometimes that was very terrifying, and it was like, it's dad's body, but when I talk to him, I see that there's someone else answering. He
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
even move the same. He doesn't even have the same voice and the same mannerisms, and the same with my mom. And so I basically knew that both of them were probably very aware of, the entities and the strange energies going on, but they were numbing themselves from that. Um, but they, both of them dabbled in a little bit of dark magic.
Yeah.
And that really, really affected my dad. My mom probably too, but it was just that the first type of like spirituality that was presented to me was very much the dark side and the scary side.
Hmm.
And so the like abductions at night were a nice change for me, because
Interesting.
the people who took me became like another family. I remember that especially this female being was like my other mother, and they took me to worlds that were just like beautiful. And I feel like maybe it was my home at a certain
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And it was the same places and the same ships, and I grew to really love them and to enjoy this. But as I grew up, it became different. So in the beginning, it was just like me playing with other children, and it was also a little bit school-like. So we had to like do
Yeah.
tasks. There were like these screens that we were just basically, it felt like training to behave like a human. Um,
Yeah.
or just like learning to be a human child and act like a human child. Um, but then it started to change, and we moved from Spain to Switzerland. Or well, my mom, she stood behind because my parents separated, and I wanted to go with my dad.
Yeah.
And then I went to school, and then like the world started to feel even stranger because I didn't speak the language. I could only speak
Totally.
Spanish. And
Yeah.
then we lived at my grandma's, and she could speak French and Italian, and I sort of understood Italian, and I picked that up pretty quickly. And then I went into an international like kindergarten where, there were children from all over the world who didn't speak German, so everybody just spoke English there. But that was only for like 2 years. And then I went into regular kindergarten where everybody spoke German. And it
So
was
you're
like,
like an alien in a weird way, kind of like how you were being taught in this other astral realm, like to be a human. Here you were on Earth, and suddenly you moved to another place. It's like, wow, I don't even know the language now, and somehow I have to. And anyway, I didn't mean to derail where you were going, but that's an interesting observation that you were being trained for being human at a certain age, and at the same time in your human life, you were going through the process of being alienated and having to switch into this kind of new place.
it started to feel even stranger, and I started to like become more aware of my surroundings and of just what the grown-ups are talking about. Mm. And I noticed how everybody just started to say that, this family is strange, or this child is special.
Mm.
And you know how they mean it. It's like, this child is special.
Totally, totally.
And then when I went to kindergarten and then like to first class, I noticed how I couldn't relate to the children in my age. We didn't have the same interests. Well, I guess like the pretty much the only things that I was interested in was like everything that had to do with nature and animals. But then also, like dark stuff that my friends wouldn't encounter and weren't familiar with.
Yeah.
But I was able to make friends in the beginning, and children were coming, to my home, and we would visit each other. But soon the children also noticed that like our home is spooky, and they told their parents, and then the parents said, okay, you're not going to this place anymore, you're not playing with this child anymore. So it was like I was becoming more and more alienated in this world as I grew up. And then I noticed how uh, just the astral experiences became a little bit darker as well. Before, I never had bad experiences when I was abducted. It was strange, yes, but and sometimes maybe a little bit dangerous, but I always felt like there was someone looking after me.
Yeah. Around like what age did it start to get darker, or that's that sort of turn, that change started to occur?
I was like 7 or 8, so I was like in
Okay.
first or second grade
Yeah.
here. And then it started to become like more sort of reptilian. And I haven't seen these beings before. And also just I will just say it, like the entity of my dad started to become way more active. Like it was
Oh,
scary. Sometimes he would like get up at night and scream around, and he would not be
yeah.
present, but
Yeah. That's
that
wild.
was getting strange. And
So you were sort of getting like we could call it a crash course into negative spirituality entities. You were viewing and observing the process of attachment, or maybe we could say, I mean, it's always hard for me to say certain words, but possession, there we go, at a much earlier age than most people on earth. And you were even noticing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you were even noticing the way you as a child, it's almost like that sort of energy or the vibration, even though it wasn't you, you were seeing the way, there's just something different. There's like a different form of energy or something, maybe about you or the frequency. And I don't know, hopefully I'm not cutting too far into the future, maybe I might be, but feel free to rewind if you need to, but was there a stage when you started to realize that there was an ability underneath all of the weirdness and the unpalatable palatability like in your life? Where was there a stage when you're like, maybe I can do something with this?
Mm, well, at first I just thought that I was crazy because my parents also said that, all of this is not real. And I also had a lot of just past life dreams and irrational fears
Mm.
around, floodings that are going to come. And I just know. And there was this other instance where I was just cuddling my dad. And I remember that I was like laying on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. And then I had a knowing. And I can't tell if there was like actually a being telling me that, or if it was just like higher knowing, where I got the information that he is going to die soon. And so I burst into tears like on his chest and go like, I don't want you to die. I'm so scared. And he's like, oh my God, my child is fucking nuts. But I didn't
Wow.
really know that this was an ability. And I started to, I just wanted to fit in because I was growing up. I was becoming a teenager, and I just wanted to be a normal teenager. And I have to say, like, the abductions stopped when I was about 11 or 12.
Wow.
And the moment I realized that my main life is actually here on Earth was before. That was like when I was around 8. I had a moment where I realized that shit, I'm actually stuck here. And then that was like a little awakening, or just like a little realization of,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't like this place.
Can you just tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind? Just because that feels like a big spike, like on the energy meter, and also I'm like very very interested in it. But yeah, how did you come to that understanding?
It was super strange. I was just playing in my room. And as I said, while I was going through this, I never remembered what happened that night. Only when I was like going back to bed and I went back into this alpha state and I got the strange feeling, then I remembered everything. But during the day, I didn't remember a thing. So I thought that I was only here. But then there was this one day when I was just playing in my room and I was looking out the window and I saw stars. It wasn't dark yet, but in winter, it's like in the twilight you begin to see the stars, although the sky is still sort of blue. And I saw these stars and I felt so sad. I just felt so sad. It was like this really strong homesickness, and just this knowing that I cannot just go to the stars right now. And I didn't know where this feeling came from. It was very overwhelming. And I remember that my mom came into my room like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I'm so sad. That was really bad. And then I started to realize that, yeah, you are actually stuck in this place. And there was like a little moment of realizing that I have already experienced a lot in these like 8 years of my life. And now I have to continue here and like
We're
stay here.
stuck here. We're stuck here.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
that was weird. But so yeah, growing up, I mean, in my teenagers, I really started to shut that down because I noticed that I'm never going to fit in if I keep talking about, spirits and death and demons and stuff. And but then still, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Um, I was like the outcast forever. And then I had a little bit of a
Yeah,
goth phase as
totally.
well. Like that started with
Absolutely.
13, when I was like all about death, and nothing is nice and everything's dark and everything's
Totally.
pain.
Hmm.
And then I was in there until I discovered um, Mary Jane and I started to smoke. I couldn't wait until I was old enough to smoke weed because I just had a feeling that this is going to give me something.
Right, right.
Um,
Interesting.
and then I started to smoke it only so I could fall asleep, because I had like the strangest nights where I had such a hard time to fall asleep, and I still had like a fear that I couldn't explain myself around going to
Yeah,
sleep and like
yeah,
bedtime.
makes
And then
sense.
I discovered this, and for the first time, I slept so peacefully. And then I thought that, wow, I have discovered this like wonderful medicine. Um, but yeah, I mean, I did have some friends, but I was just always, I noticed how I could never really be myself. I could never be my authentic self. But because I was really good at observing, I was basically like mimicking the behavior that I saw around me, that I realized that this was accepted, you know.
Totally,
So
totally. Just act like all the other humans, and maybe they
yeah,
won't know, or maybe all isn't this that's what everyone else is doing, right? Yeah, I think this is how we do it here. Um,
yeah.
which I guess makes sense. But yeah, what was around what age were you when you finally realized, this is a true ability and I am meant to be, or maybe I can work with, spirit in a healing form? Because it sounds like a lot of us, and I had a tremendous amount of, very similar events early on in life where it's like my first experiences, I guess in my case, my first experiences with spirituality were through this very, very dark version of a Christian church that we were a part of that was very, very abusive in all the ways you can imagine. And that was my first, like intro into that world. And so I got to see the other, like another type of the darkness from a very early age. And, we all find our kind of way out of that. But, around what age were you when you finally realized that there was something that you were going to do or heal or kind of become with this?
That was a very long process because I had severe depressions. I thought that I was broken because that's what, everybody made me believe. And I believed it myself. And so I began to, go to therapy and numb everything down and take very strong medication.
Mhm.
But I was always interested in, first of all, of course, psychology, because I wanted to just try to learn about the things that they talk about and the things that I experience. And it never really resonated, but still I wanted to give it a try because everybody was pushing me to, listen to the doctors and they only want to help you. And it didn't really help. But on the other side, I had this fascination with just the universe and just that there is more to this life than just this physical and material and like program type of, yeah, little programs that we are supposed to live in. And so I love to watch like documentaries on just the universe. And that was a moment where I sort of felt, I know, comfortable and kind of fuzzy and where I could just drift off into and feel good. And then this sort of went into like more of the metaphysical stuff. And then I realized, like, more from, I guess, an intellectual perspective, how the lines begin to blur, from like physics to metaphysics. And I'm like, yeah, I think that there is more. And then I started to just consume a lot of material around that and started to watch YouTube videos. And but the moment I realized that I could do it, it's like I can't even pinpoint the moment. It was really a slow development from victimizing myself and being like this victimhood was my comfort zone, and I thought that, I'm broken and I'm going to take pills and numb myself for the rest of my life and just going to hate it forever. But what I do know is that even in depression, I kept feeling these waves of just, I think we could call it like God awareness, where
Mhm.
this came through, where I just felt this rush of just, yeah, it's hard to describe, of love and of light. And so I kind of knew that this also exists very much deep within myself.
Yeah,
And I realized how this actually feels even more authentic or more at home than all the dark stuff.
yeah. That's a very important observation. And I, I have noticed in my own way and in my own path that, that I think that's kind of a standard experience. Well, I always call it the maladies of the star seed, which is kind of a cheesy label now. Everyone's throwing it around, but it's like those of us that come in here from not of earth origin, whether it doesn't matter what planet or what system or what realm, there's a bazillion of them. But it's like we tend to have to go through that, whether it's an addiction, whether it's the abuses, whether it's that extreme alienation from, the earthly realm. And it's like I often wonder how many, mystics, practitioners, shaman, incredible healers and psychics are there out there who are just sitting on meds, in their own apartments out in Switzerland or out here in Florida, having not realized their whole life. It's like, you're not crazy, you're psychic. You know what I mean? You're not too much, too big, too small, too this, too that. It's like we get kind of penned into this weird identity stage here on Earth. And it sounds like you were kind of coming to your own understanding of like, there is something more. There is this other kind of version of you that was kind of meant to come out. And I think with that, having said that, hopefully I'm not, segueing into a weird question here, but I do want to ask one of the questions that I have in front of me here. And that is about kind of your mission as a healer, or your mission as a practitioner. And here we go. Why do you think there are multiple missions? Do you believe in one? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
I was thinking about that a lot already when I was depressed, because I didn't know if there is something that I'm supposed to do. It's like, is there something that I'm not seeing that I'm meant to do that I would feel good like doing with? And then I discovered you in your channel, and it was called Remember Your Mission. Or no, it was called the School of Multidimensional Intuition, but it was always like, remember your mission was always a thing, right? And that sort of triggered something within me, and I started to ask myself this question in that way, like, oh, do I have a mission? It's like, is there a specific mission that I have? And I started to really wanting to figure out what it is. And I actually came to the conclusion, at least in my case, that I don't believe that I actually have a fixed Earth mission. I do believe that I came in with like certain soul contracts and with certain just like karmic stuff that I wanted to work through in this incarnation. But I feel like it doesn't actually matter what I do. I feel like my mission has been fulfilled the moment I was born. It was like my mission was to be born and incarnate one more time. But then what I do, I don't feel like it matters as long as I like doing it. I noticed that whatever I do, I have to love it, because otherwise it's, at first it's going to just bore me. And the point will come where I will just like start to hate it. And so I realized that I just, what I really want to do is I want to help people to feel better, because somehow I managed to help myself to feel better. So basically, I think the best way that I can help people is trying to find a way with them where they can help themselves. And this is very unique. And this is why it's not really fixated on any like specific thing. I mean, I can be there for people in different ways, just like in my other job where, I work at a mental hospital and mental institutions. And like you mentioned before, there are many people where I think that, especially this one woman that I have in mind, she has visions, and she is just very, very open and not grounded at all. And she has like all these entities around her tormenting her, but she's just still at the stage of not even wanting to learn about if there is something else.
I feel you.
So I don't think that I really have like a specific mission, but I think that there are certain things that I'm just good at that I should do as long as I love them.
I very much agree with that outlook. I do believe, and I have observed within my own life, it's like there will be many missions. There's many stages, many aspects of, ourselves. There's going to be numerous identities that we're going to walk through in this life. And to me, it makes absolute sense that your mission, and maybe this is cheesy, so sorry, this is a dumb statement, get ready. Your mission is to literally live the highest and best life, that you can, and to just enjoy it, or to be fully present, maybe like in the best way you can. And even still, me saying that's kind of like putting a label on it. So sorry, but
yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, it definitely.
And so I stopped to put my, I kind of put myself under pressure to like find your mission. And then it was a little bit disappointing when I came to the point of, I don't actually believe that I have a mission. But at the same time, it's also freeing. I'm fine with just going with whatever feels right at the moment.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, thank you. Tell us, if you can, a little bit about your current process of healing. And I also say this as a person who has received a session from you, and actually here, I will talk about that, because I think that's an important thing. I think especially for people that are going to watch this, that I do believe are going to want to take advantage of a very unique process that you're going that you will offer them. And so, for me, in doing the session, it was as if I could, or at least I will tell you why I was seeking it first off. As a person that does this on a professional level, I have made a point throughout the year to find people or to engage in some form of outside healing. I think that we as healers, especially me as a person that does it regularly, I think that means that there's going to be areas within our energy body or within our own makeup, kind of like that place on your back that you can't scratch. And it's like we always, or in my opinion, I think we need to find people that can help us clear our energy. And, for me, I've been going through a lot of kind of like stagnancy and just a lot of buildup from, maybe it's the work that I do or just being present publicly or just being a human in my own healing process. Because, as I know, it's like we go through an even greater version sometimes of, like the human, cycle. And, just for me, it was time. And I was at this stage of feeling very built up and very, very heavy. And I noticed that within the session that we did, it was like as soon as we kind of, made the agreement, like to start, where you sort of text someone, and I'm going to let you talk about your mode and like your process of that in a moment. But it was like as soon as we engaged in that, I have to say, I noticed this sort of phantom breath. It was like something within my body went, like this big, heavy sort of breath came in. And then, as you started, I just sort of passed out. And which to me is usually a really good sign, because that will tell me that like there's some form of energy moving. It's like my body will kind of check out. But it was like bubbles, and sort of energy was gathered around the back of my head. And it was like I could feel something like pulling and sort of, moving, and these little like twitches in my body. And in internally, it was like me going through this series of discussions, and kind of like it was like a conversation internally with myself, in which I was being shown sort of like images or air. How you'll get taken through this internalized slideshow of your world, and it was like those were the energies maybe that were kind of either popping or moving, within my body. And um honestly, it was remarkable, and all the way to the extent that, and I know you already know this, so this is kind of old news, but one of the things I've identified within me when I've had a notable amount of energy that has either just been moved or let go from the body is that I'll notice that when I go outside, it's like, and this is a sign that your liver's been cleared, just so you know. It's like you can hold so much more light, and there's this effect where you can have your eyes completely open, and it's like you can be fully present. And anyway, I know that's a long, winding description, but it was a very deep healing process. Having said all that, tell us a little bit about it. Like, what are you doing in there? How has it been going for you? And yeah, what do you think people need to know about doing a session with you?
I'm just really grateful that it actually helped and did something for you.
Yeah.
So I do different kinds of sessions, or actually, it's always the same type of session, more or less in different ways. I can either do absence sessions for people who are, there's like the time difference, or they have to work or whatever, um, where I'm not on Zoom. We're not really in contact during the session at all. But what I usually do every time is I just tune into the energy of the person beforehand, like before starting the energy work. And I just ask I just ask to be shown whatever would be helpful and relevant for this person, to just feel better and to see what they're struggling with and to see what helps right now. And then I receive all these impressions, and I like to take my time with that. And then when we do the absent, I'm going to text the client that I'm going to begin soon. And that's usually when I start to prepare the oils, the crystals, and just set up the space. Um, and then I begin, and then I do energy work. And that is, yeah, I do have sort of a line that I follow, but still it's unique every time. But it's so funny that you mentioned the bubbles, because the evening before the day I did your session, I was hanging around with actually some people from group 1 and 2.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we were just chatting, we were just hanging around, and we we were talking about how basically all of us have dreams where we meet as a group and we actually do our healings on each other and we practice them, and it's like it's in a playful way, but it's a lot of remembrance of, I guess, what we used to do, or how we used to do it in other lives. It's like this is the space where we can remember and sort of regain these things. And for me, and I told this to one of them, that I remember a dream where we were doing this thing and someone was on the table and we were experimenting and like playing with bubbles. They look like
Yeah,
bubbles.
yeah.
They look like glass. It's like they have a very, very thin shell. It feels like a solid object, but it's like it's so thin that it's barely physical. And they float. It's like this little, very light glass bubble that I would place above like the chest or the head, and they would float in different distances, and then they would go like in and out. And that was just a thing that I dreamt about. And then I told them that maybe I'm going to try this because it's something that I remember. And it was the first time that I tried this with the bubbles with you. And so I was like, wow, you saw bubbles, or you perceived
Oh,
bubbles somehow.
really? I really noticed it. It was as if it would kind of inflate like in areas of my body, like especially around the back of my head. It was like,
Hmm.
and then this sort of energy would kind of pull off, and I mean, just remarkably noticeable, which is not always a sign of anything in, sometimes it's our own body creating that, but the very fact that there's a link there, I mean, it was shocking. And I mean, very, and maybe this is me creating too specific of a like a question here, but for individuals that would be wanting to take advantage of this healing, what sort of things would they come to you to get help with? Like what sort of issues, or what kind of stuff would be happening in their life that they would be seeking healing from you?
Some people just have a little bit of a hard time with being comfortable to be themselves. You know, it's like a lack of confidence and self trust and self worth and stuff like that. For many, it's just a stage of ending a cycle and beginning a new one. And they
Uh,
feel like, they are carrying all this weight and all this stuff that they want to get rid of, so that they can begin a new cycle and feel lighter. And some are actually really like mentally ill and have a lot of anxiety. And that's also like the absence sessions are really like good for them because they are even too scared to come on Zoom and do it like face to face.
that's a really good idea to do it that way, actually. Huh.
Yeah, and that's a thing that I discovered in a course before I did yours, because at first that was a thing that was like hard for me to understand that it would be possible to reach someone without interacting with them at all. Um, but it does, like I can feel it. It seems like everybody else does, and it's a
Oh
thing.
yeah.
It works. It's like we
I have a
just connect
question
our
about
energy
that.
bodies, and they work together.
Yeah, and maybe once again, maybe this is me pushing too far with the question, but what do you think it is that helps you maybe work more effectively within that situation when it is absence? Because, and I ask this question as a person who does sessions in my own right, as you know, and I thrive on the we have to be talking. And as long as we're talking and you can hear, I mean, that's just my kind of like frequency based mode of operation. But what tell us a little bit about that, like when you're doing the sort of remote like connection thing, what is that like, what
Um,
is happening in there, and how does the energy
yeah,
show up?
I get where you're going. The difference for me is, and I totally also enjoy having people here physically. So I have a room installed, and some people are here physically,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
sometimes it's on Zoom, and sometimes it's absent. And for me, the difference is I also do enjoy the conversation beforehand, because when they are here in person or when we do it on Zoom, it's like I'm going to read them the list of the things, the impressions that I received before, and they can like answer and we can talk about it. And sometimes these conversations can go really deep and really like for a long time. And the good thing is that a lot can be resolved there already. But sometimes the conversations just don't stop. And like we keep talking until at least I feel like my head is like this, you know? And I actually want it to be like a calming and releasing and relaxing experience. Um, and if we have like too long conversations or like too detailed ones, it's just that I feel a little bit more drained than if I
Right.
can keep that short. And when I do the absent ones, it's just that I collect all the information and I write it down anyway as I receive it. And then I can just send that out to the client.
Yeah.
And then they can respond if they want, or if they don't want, that's fine too. But it's like they have it there, and it's not this back and forth that can go for quite a long time sometimes.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it sounds like based upon like the need of the individual or what they're going through, you're going to do, either the, a in in person or, at least over Zoom session versus, when you're within that remote space, you're working with energy maybe differently, or it's easier for you to, what's the word we're looking for? Conserve your energy in some form and be maybe more effective, which I've actually thought about starting to do sessions in that way. Historically, people have asked me, and I've been like, I don't know. I think I need to talk to people, but I always really, I greatly admire those that can do that, like distant session work. I think that shows a very different level of being able to connect astrally, which honestly it would make sense that you're very, very good at, given all the experiences that you had at an earlier stage of my life. I think that's for a lot of us, that's what makes us really good at the thing that we do. And I guess this is me instantly going to another question, so be ready. And maybe that is the question is, why do certain people struggle so much with their earth life? I know that you've talked about the targeted, the TI programs targeted individuals. Wow, it's so hard for me to say certain words, and why do you think other people are able to just kind of float through life with this strange ease? What are your views on that?
I have a strange theory that I sort of talked about that with my mom. It's actually my stepmom. It's like my stepmom is my mom when I talk about my mom. We are very close, and I can like fully be myself. And she's one of the few people who actually understands what I talk about because she experiences pretty much the same thing in the same way, or just like her own version of it. And the way we experience it is that, just besides all the like soul contract stuff and the agreements that we made, that sometimes we actually come in to work on karmic stuff and just have a hard time and struggle in all of that. I believe that there is like a soul blueprint that we have that we carry in. But as we are born into this just control structure or like sentient matrix or however we want to call it, the program that is like sentient and alive as well, I feel like there is another blueprint that is it's supposed to fit on top or like into our soul blueprint because it has written a program just for us that we are supposed to like move inside and function in. It's like a frame that the program has made for us, or at least like that's my experience. And for some of us, it's almost like the soul blueprint is like bleeding through,
Hmm.
and we just don't really want to, live that program, or we strive for other things. And then it's almost like the world notices that and starts to fight. And
Hmm.
then it begins like, it feels like everything in life is a fight, or at least that was my experience. And I know a couple of people who experience it in a very similar way. Some call it like energy attacks or stuff like that. But sometimes I feel like we are bumping against the wall of the program that was written for us. And
Totally.
we are trying to override it, and it is trying to stop us. And the more we push, the harder it gets. And if we still sort of push through eventually, it seems like stuff is going to break around us. It's like technology is going to break down anything that is like electric is going to just act weird, and then people are going to just behave very irrationally. Um,
Yeah,
and I just believe that this is a phenomenon that some of us experience, where it's almost like it's not just hard to live as a human per se, but it's like we are fighting against the program that is noticing us and that wants to keep us in our little box. It's like, no, you are not meant to, I don't know, be successful or have money or be fulfilled or be happy, because it's not in the program. It's not for you.
totally.
Um, yeah. So what do you think about it?
We are battling against the AI matrix, the you will own nothing and love it or be happy, AI program. I certainly have noticed that stage or the frequency in life that I will adopt, and I know everyone else does it at a certain stage where it's like you are definitely against, the entire world, or it feels as though that sort of confrontation or the difficult energy that you're experiencing, it's like you'll sort of like send that out and the matrix will literally just pummel you with it. And I don't know, maybe I'm articulating it awkwardly, but I tend to agree with what you're saying. And I guess with that, I'm going to add a totally weird random question into the mix. And this is a comment that I see a lot of people make, and I don't necessarily believe it, but do you think Earth is a prison planet? Because a lot of people talk about that. They're like, this is like a prison planet. And when you look at some of the like, the effects or the way we experience the balance of power on Earth, from certain perspectives, we could say that maybe it is, but like what do you think?
I think it can be. I
Yeah.
don't think it necessarily is in general. I think it is like very, very interesting to experience. Um, but yeah, for some, it can feel very much like a prison, just because maybe they don't have the strength to actually like push through, if they are maybe one of the individuals who, I don't know, have a frequency who seem to disturb the matrix. It can feel like a prison, but I don't think that it has to be. I think it has a lot to do with just the personal perspective.
Yeah, I feel you. I actually totally agree. I think it will be a prison planet if it needs to
Yeah.
be a prison planet for some people, and for some of us, it's going to need to be that. And
For
um,
some, it's a boot camp. For some, it's like vacation.
I think it's a little bit of all those things. I know at least, like for me, I actively chose like to come and do the Earth experience this time. I feel it in my body. It was like, yes, 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 we're going type of a finally, it's like, you know, w- w- so what am I trying to say? One last job, that whole thing. It's like one last mission, like we're trying to get in there. And anyway, I'm making it
For
lame,
me,
but
it feels like I was like, I just have
yeah.
to.
So anyway, yeah, I feel myself getting random and weird. I have just a very straightforward question. As a person that does this on a professional level, how do you actually define healing? What does that look like? What does that mean to you?
I really love that question. I find it actually important to talk about it, because I remember that I had the idea that healing means getting rid of anything that hurts us. Getting rid of, if you have an injured shoulder or something, getting rid of that pain, and sort of fixing everything how it's supposed to be, like being sane and being healthy and being happy. And that I had the idea that healing has something to do with like perfection and with getting rid of everything that is sort of bothering us in life. Um, but I just don't actually believe that anymore at all, just after, what I have lived through. And I started to understand that what healing means for me is actually maybe a relief, or just finding an individual way of dealing with whatever is bothering us. I realized that like 90% of it is our perspective and our focus. And there are some things, and I do believe that I would call that miracle, if you like just have a spontaneous healing of something. And I do believe that this happens, and
Mhm.
I'm open for it to happen, absolutely. But
Yeah.
what I think that I help people with, or what is healing for me, is sort of finding a way to deal with things and feeling good despite everything that is going on. Because we can heal a thing and sort of relieve a trauma or something, but life
Mm.
keeps happening. And I don't believe that the things we experience that weren't necessarily very pleasant, that these are things that are supposed to be fixed, or that these are things that we should get rid of. And I am also not the person that someone should seek if they are hoping for, someone to take away their entities or their darkness, because this is not what I do. I don't actually, yeah, maybe it's good to talk about that, because
Oh
I
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
actually very much engage in interacting with entities when I do a healing session.
Mm.
It's a thing that shows up sometimes, eventually.
Yeah.
Some don't like me and sort of hide, and I don't mind that. And some really show. But as long as they just don't really bother me, then I don't pay attention to them. Because after the session, I would say, there is like a change of the frequency of the energy in the person, and in the best case, it might not be a match anymore for the entity, and
Right.
it will not have the whatever it had to grab on anymore. But then, if the person goes back into their life and doesn't change anything, then
Yeah.
chances are that everything is going to return just the way it was. And so what
Yeah.
I really hope that I can help people with is just to realize that we are responsible, and no one can take away our pain. No one can take away our experiences. No one can take away our attachments. But, we can get support with that. But if we don't change our lives, if we don't change our patterns, if we aren't ready to take responsibility and accept and integrate what happened to us and who we are, no healer in the world is going to save you. No healer is going to heal you. Um, yeah, that's what I believe.
It makes sense. I have encountered a very similar situation with a number of people over the years. It's like as much work as you can do. And I'm very much like you. When we're within that healing session, it's a thing that both individuals are doing. It's not, the healer doing a thing to you. It's really an opportunity or an opening for that to happen. And it sounds like you are more about treating the root causes, or like the vessel from which that energy is attached to, rather than the energies around it, which also, as a person that does this on an everyday level, I believe that is, in many cases, the best way to actually clear the energy body is we go to the root cause, or that person's like individual energy, rather than what's around it. And then there's also times when you do go to what's around it, but it sounds like you are very good in knowing like what your role is within that. And it sounds like your role, and please add on to this, or correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, one of your roles, at least right now, is to help people bring clarity into their internal environment, or to heal kind of the density, or to release the density, within the body, or maybe come to new understandings of maybe where they're going or what they're doing in their life. Does any of that stuff make sense?
It totally resonates. I would even say that it reminds me of, I used to be a tattooist for like 2 years or
Oh
so.
yeah.
And we always used to say the clients, and I guess that's something that even applies in the spiritual work, that it's a 50-50% process. It's like I make the tattoo, or I provide the energy work and the healing, and the other person has to do the other half. And that means taking care of that state or that healing or that tattoo. Um, yeah, I would say it's very much of a 50-50 thing.
Is there any other paranormal experiences that you would want to bring us through? I know you had some crazy experience with an MRI, or at least I think you mentioned something about that.
I was wondering, that was actually, I wanted to ask you,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
have heard from multiple people, including myself, that it is a strange experience to go through an MRI. I did it because of the migraines. And I remember that I was laying in this thing, and they told me that, you know, the nurses were outside. I could sort of see them through glass in the other room, and they were talking to me every once in a while, and they would like switch frequencies or whatever. Um, and there was this one instance where I could definitely like feel a presence in the room besides me, and it was very, very noticeable. It
Wow.
wasn't like dark or light or anything, but it was like a very strong presence of someone being there. And I was worried because they told me that no one else is allowed in the room, that this is dangerous, and that I have to be alone in the room. And so I said, "Wait, who is there? Who's there?" It's like there's someone next to me, and they say, "No, there's no one there." And I couldn't believe it. And there was this other thing where they switched again, and I was laying on my back, and all of a sudden I was like, my energy body or like my astral body just popped up and was erect. And then they switched it again, and I was like sucked back in, and they were like, it was super weird. I don't know what is happening
Wow.
in an MRI. I think that magnetism and just electromagnetism, when it creates such a strong field, that
Yeah.
sometimes it's almost like a portal of some sorts,
Oh
and
yeah.
that things can really like mix up.
That's a very good question. That's wild, and I absolutely, absolutely, I do believe that there was some sort of like a presence or a being there, even if it was like a hospital ghost or I mean, who knows. But anyway, I'll be honest, I've never had an MRI. I did have a CT scan at one point, which I think is like sort of like a donut thing that they put you through. Or I know I went through some sort of a donut like a device at a hospital at like at one point when I was in high school. But so I don't know that I've experienced the MRI frequency, but what I have observed, I think, with really strange electromagnetic fields or just the waves of energy that in many cases could even be, you know, summoned or generated through stuff like that, is I think you're definitely right. It feels like there's a portal effect. But I would say that's, to me, it would be more so about your energy and your frequency, and maybe the idea that due to your makeup you would have a more profound experience in something like that than maybe another person. I think part of that would have to do with like just, you know, who you are as this, you know, hybrid, you know, human being. You know, you're probably going to have a deeper experience. But I have also heard at the same time about how people will have an MRI done in certain areas of their body, and like memories will show up, you know, fragments of time will kind of like show up, you know, back again, and just all sorts of strange things can occur. And anyway,
Yeah, weird.
I believe it, but
Their personality changes. I've heard very, very strange things about that. But
oh yeah,
yeah, I was
absolutely.
just curious because that was an that was something that I just have never experienced before, and that I wasn't prepared for. Oh, and there was also like this slightly radioactive substance that they injected into
Mhm.
me. So maybe like when everything plays together, I just think that, you know, like this radioactivity and then hypersensitivity or whatever, or just a very loose astral body combined with this very strong electromagnetic field, that yeah, weird things happen.
Yeah. Huh. Very, very interesting. I have just a couple other questions, one of which is totally random out of nowhere. And I'm just kind of wondering, as a person, maybe, you know, whether it was early life, current life, other stages of your journey, as you have been meeting with, you know, maybe we could call it ETs or, you know, other beings, you know, throughout the cosmos in your travels. Have you ever got an idea of maybe what star systems or types of ETs or groups that you're working with? And before you answer that, the reason why I ask is, number one, because I'm definitely, you know, I would genuinely like to know, but also because I have observed that we're kind of stuck in between five or six ET groups, you know, on Earth.
Mm.
It's like you're either, you know, like a Arcturian,
Pleiadian.
Pleiadian, a Lyran, or a Syrian, or what's another one?
Andromeda.
Yeah, there you go. Which is fun, because if you think about it, you're talking about an entire galaxy. So it's
Yeah.
like saying I met somebody from Earth. You know, I know that's a much more smaller version, but it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, but
there's so
still.
many different beings there, guys. What, did you meet a mouse, or did you meet a human? Did you meet an elephant? So it's like sometimes when I hear people do the Andromedan contact, it's like Okay, so tell us a little bit more. But yeah, during in your own experiences, what sort of beings or what kind of energies do you feel in resonance with?
The beings, I can only describe them because somehow, yeah, the labels don't really resonate with me. And I remember that I had a phase where I really wanted to know, what are the groups and where could I come from and stuff like that. And then I heard all types of descriptions about the beings from regions of I don't know where. And then I also thought, yeah, but how can you describe a being or a race? Yeah, it's like you said, it's like describing a human. You know, I don't think that it can be that accurate, but I do feel that there are groups, and they have like a specific sort of feeling to them. And I do feel like I had a phase where, but I wasn't even familiar with the term starseed back then. It was in my teenage years where I was like very separated from my real self. But I remember that there was this group of stars that I used to look at that made me very, very emotional. And it was this feeling that I had when I was 8 years old. And I looked out the windows and saw these stars, and I had this sinking, like, sadness
Mhm.
in me.
Yeah, yeah.
So there seems to be, but I couldn't even really say which ones they are because I remember that um, I tried to find them a little bit later and I wasn't sure anymore.
Yeah.
But then I started to have sessions with like people who claim to have connections and know about these things. And what kept repeating from them was Pleiadian and Orion and
Yeah.
Andromedan.
Yeah.
Um, so it seems to like be within there. And I mean, I do look at, and I always looked at Orion a lot, but because it's so like dominant in the sky, and I feel like if I come from there, I feel like I come like from not from the center, but like from the top.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. I think you
but
probably
yeah.
do. In my opinion, I believe the very fact that we're even linked and like talking in this life or are familiar with each other has to do a lot with the Orion system, just because and it's not that there's one singular origin. I think for everyone, I think there's many places that we spend time in, life cycles in this, realm. But I've just noticed that a lot of the, notable people that I've been in, close like contact with in this life have been Orion beings. And you do hold the Orion kind of like vibration, especially right now in this moment. For those of you guys that will see this is a good example of the Orion energy.
Okay.
And it's a very powerful and advanced, and and it could be light and it could be dark. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it could be either one. It's about the choice. But I definitely
Honestly, I think that I'm a mix of everything
yeah,
because like me as a physical
yeah.
body, I'm a mix of all kinds of countries. And I believe that I'm probably just also a mix of all sorts of influences because I've had encounters with like what feels like inner earth visits with
Mhm.
people who are very like elf-like that also resonate with me. But some of the aliens that I had like very early encounters with, they have blue skin and also look a little bit elf-like.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell if they are, Pleiadian or whatever. But I also, had just encounters with the elementals, and there are so many different beings that sometimes I can't tell if they actually come from another star system or if they are just in another dimension. I mean, I did have like contact, but like in the astral and in meditation with mantid beings,
Mhm.
but very rarely. But I can recognize them because of how they look,
Yeah.
and because of how they feel, and because they don't show up a lot. And so these are the ones where I can say like, okay, these were these guys. But
Yeah.
when others show up, it's not like they say, "Hello, we're from Orion," or "Hello, we are this group," or "We
I
are
agree.
this."
Nobody actually does that. Everybody, I thank you for saying that. I have never encountered that thing where, I will, meet some sort of a being or, come across this, sentient being within the astral space. No one has ever once been like, hello, I am from Sirius. It's like never. It's not even a thought. It's
Yeah.
not a transaction that occurs. And anyway, but yeah,
I just remembered what I wanted to add
yeah.
with the healing before, just the thing that I do and that I believe that it's 50-50. And what I believe that I do when I do a healing is that I try to put the person, like the whole system, the whole body spirit complex thing, into a state of harmony with how things are at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, of course, I do like a clearing and a recharging, but actually, my goal is, yeah, for them to feel good with everything that is going on.
Yeah.
Because I am not going to, like, solve your problems, and they are probably not going to dissolve into thin air, but it's like putting the body and the mind and spirit into a state of, this is how you could feel despite everything. And then it's up to the person to sort of cultivate or take care of that feeling and figuring
Yeah.
out how they can create it with it.
Yeah, so sort of
Yes.
like clearing space within their kind of energy bubble so that they can then take that action, or that they can then know like, oh, this is my next step, or oh yeah, I was gonna, you
Yeah,
know,
and just to know that, oh, this is how I could feel right now,
yeah.
despite everything going on.
Huh.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I can honestly say, and I know that you already heard this, so it's kind of old news, but one of the things that I noticed from the energy session that you and I did was that I've been seeking inspiration in terms of things that I'm meant to put in this book that I've been putting together for like 2 years. And it was literally the first time when some of those words were just given to me after
Mm.
our session in a really, really shocking way, where I still have them now. So I'm like, I know that was not just a transient energy. It's like I can still think of it now. And so anyway, I would say for those of you out there that will find this video in the multi-dimensional time stream, please get a hold of Nora. For those that are just seeking clarity, inspiration to understand, what could it be like, or how actually good could it get within my current journey. And I guess having said all that, is there anything else that you would want to share with us about the work that you're doing, or just any of your other experiences that you think it's important for us to be made aware of?
I would just want to say to all of those who are thinking about maybe, taking a course of yours or going through your activation program, to really give it a try. For me, it definitely changed my life. And not only that, but after never really finding friends where I felt like I could be myself, it was like, and for me, it was good that it was a group thing, because I am not a group person. But I came into this group of these just amazing individuals that I'm still in contact with and that I appreciate and love so much by now. They became such an important part of my life. And so did you, by the way. It's like, I am just so grateful for everything. And if you are like on the verge of, should I do it or not? It's like, if you can, then do it. Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very, very sincerely. It is truly an honor to be doing what we're doing. And yeah, tell us one last time, how can people find you? For those that want to book a session or just get in touch with you on a greater level, how do we find you again?
My website is nora-healings.com. I do also have a YouTube channel, but it's not like I can promise anyone that I will keep uploading stuff, because it's a very experimental thing for me. So there was like the astral abduction experiences and just a couple of dream experiences that I wanted to share that I put into a series. And then there were a couple of other things, but for me, it's just a thing that I do when I feel inspired. But you can find me on YouTube, and you can find me on Instagram, although I'm also not there very often. But
Okay,
that
cool,
that can also change. I work the way that when I feel inspired, I'm going to share stuff on there. You can find me, you can contact me,
cool.
and I'll definitely be there.
So what is the name of your YouTube channel? How do we find it?
I think it's Nora Healings.
Okay, so
Nora
Nora,
Healings.
Nora Healings across the board. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you guys that have found this message, thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for being a part of our strange channel. And I think if there is one prayer that I have, is that for those of you that are out there trying to understand, what is my ability? What is my calling? What is my mission? How do I figure out what it is that I'm meant to do or be? Or maybe you've noticed those changes or things activating within yourself. I am just one of many people on this earth plane that are working with people in that way. And now you also know about Nora. And so my prayer is that some of you guys out there are going to be taking advantage of the healing and the work that she has to offer. And yeah, I look forward to just, continuing to walk this path alongside you. And I'm really honored that we got to do this strange thing here on earth, like this time around. It really feels like a thing that we've done in some form, over and over. And it's like, here we are on earth again. How does this go? Oh yeah. Okay. So like we're people now. And anyway, it's been really cool to have you as a part of our kind of strange little family soul group thing. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Cool. Absolutely. And for everyone else out there, check in with us in the next week or so. We're going to be doing a few more of these painfully awkward yet totally awesome interviews about real people and stuff that are going on, and just what it is that we're called to do, and to become, and what it is that we're capable of as strange beings here on earth. And so in the meantime, we will see you on the flip side, live from the School of Multidimensional Intuition. Well, sometimes I can barely even say that, which is actually why we changed it to remember your mission. But anyway, I love you guys. We will see you in the future, and stay out of trouble.